I'm ready to start with the upholstery process, which is going to be kind of complex for someone like me who doesn't do this all the time. This is batting, cotton batting, and under there I have a thin, this is poly foam, okay, and I cut it to fit around these arms. And under there I have I think it's 4 inches of this cushion that I bought. If you're going to upholster something, you want to make sure the cushion overshoots the edge by about that much, because when I tighten it down, which is what you want, a really, really tight fit when you're upholstering something, it's going to be compressed and it's going to fit just fine. So I've pulled this all back through the back, and this is going to get covered later, obviously. So I'm going to go ahead and staple this with the batting right to this wood. I'm just kind of doing my best to go around the areas that I have to go around. And it doesn't have to be real snug yet, because this is the first part I'm attaching. When I attach the front side, then I will be pulling really tightly on it. So I don't know if you remember, but I had these cardboard things just as a little bit of a support for the fabric. So I used the old ones as a template, and I just cut some new ones. And then I pulled my batting and my fabric from the seat, from under here. I pulled this through. And I'm going to go ahead and staple it here. I turned it around. Now I'm going to do the other side. This side is much more important that I get a really, really tight fit on this. I'm going to start in the middle. Alright, so I finished the stapling, and now I'm just going to cut off my extra fabric. I've turned the chair upside down now to attach the very front pieces. Try to avoid any puckering. And I'm going to staple it onto this back side. It's not the bottom of the chair, it's actually beyond the bottom to the underside of this wood. I finished around the front. This is one of my challenging areas here. Okay, so this is going to show. This is going to be upholstered. All right, so I just have to figure out what's the best way to go about this. And I think what I'm going to do is pull this batting in and double it up. I might as well use all the batting that's in there. It's very expensive. And then I'm going to pull this. Now I've put my layer of thin foam against the back springs, and I'm getting ready to put this on, but I need to trim it in a few places, and I like to use the knife on my wood burning tool. It works really well. I decided that I want to line my foam up with this back. I'm not going to do padding on the back. I'm just going to do a cardboard reinforcement. So I'm going to kind of just try to do my best and trim this a little bit. I went ahead and pulled the fabric and the batting through that's covering the seat, the back of the seat, pulled it through under here and stapled it in place. I've got a little too much pad here. I already trimmed some, but I didn't want to over trim it. So now I'm going to trim a little bit. I'm going to staple this side in place, and then I will, once this is stapled in place, then I'll go pull that and trim that side. I'm about ready to pull this top piece down and staple it underneath here, but I just wanted to show you real quick that I'm cut these little corners out of the padding so that this gets pulled tight and this gets pulled tight. Then I don't have a big lump of extra padding right there. So just kind of cutting yourself a little square out is a good way to handle that. And real quick, I wanted to mention that one thing I made sure to do, because I have a pattern on my upholstery fabric, is before I cut any pieces or start stapling, I need to make sure that my pattern is at a good place on the chair, you know? So I decided to center it based on this right here, okay? And also on the seat part, I centered part of the pattern there. So that's really important if you have a pattern that you want to make sure that you have it situated exactly where you want it before you start cutting or stapling. Now before I start stapling, I anchored the fabric to make sure that it was centered. I did one staple up here in the center of the back and then one on each side here to make sure that the center of my fabric pattern goes right down the center of the chair. And then I just pull this real snug. Now I'm going to start stapling around the edges here. And I double check as I go that I don't have any puckering on the front side. So I'm just gathering as I go before I staple to make sure that it's the way that I want it to look before I put the staple in. Now I'm going to show you on the arms what I ended up having to do. It's a bit patchworky, but I just kind of try to work with what I have and do my best. So under here, I ran out of the yellow cotton fabric I was putting right under the upholstery. So I found these pillow shams that I had stored away from something, and they're kind of quilted, so I thought that would work to kind of give it a little bit more sturdiness under my upholstery fabric. And so I've got that stapled in there. And now I've got this cut to the right size. I'm going to start stapling it in. One thing I did have to do with this, if you can see, there's actually a seam right here. When I pull it tight, it's not going to be very noticeable, but I did run out of fabric, and so I had to piece two pieces together to get it big enough to cover the full arm. But I think it's going to be okay, and that's typically what I do, is I just kind of try to find a way to make it work. This has been a pretty big learning experience for me. I tip the chair upside down, obviously, so that I can staple this, the side of the arm underneath. So I just fold it over if I can. I've had a few spots that cut it pretty close, but I'm going to start in the center and then work my way to the sides. Kind of pulling as tight as I can here. This is a tricky area for me because I have to do the upholstery nails. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to stick a few staples in there just to hold it in place while I'm hammering in the upholstery nails, because I'm not super great with my aim. I'm kind of tearing up the wood that I just refinished, so I don't want to do that. But anyway, so what I'm going to do is I fold this under. This layer stays inside under this wood, and then I'm not going to staple this yet. I'm going to wait until I get the sides done, and then I know how much I have to kind of cinch together and how to make that look right. So the first thing I'm going to do is kind of this part that it juts out the widest, so I know how much fabric I have to work with. Okay, and I'm just going to put a staple in there. And it's a really good thing these staples are super easy to pull out, because whenever I make a mistake, I can just pull it out, or I can use it to hold it in place and pull it out later when I don't need it anymore. So I'll just keep going around like this, putting a staple in every so often. And this is where it gets pretty funny, because I have wasted so many of these upholstery nails trying to get them in straight, and I bend them. But here goes, we're trying. I did get the other arm done, so I know it's possible. So I'm just gonna keep going. I did end up buying some new upholstery pins that I liked better than the old ones. They were only 11 cents each, so I figured, what the heck. So I am gonna start, I figure with my top, I'm gonna need one there. So now I have to think about placement of them, how far apart I'm gonna put them so they can stay fairly consistent. So there'll be one on top, maybe another one here. It's really hard because I have nowhere to put my fingers. There, first one in. Not bad. So we have this extra. I think I'm going to do on the other arm, which of course I want them to match. I have 2 on the top, so I need to remember to do 2 on the top. So I'm going to do 1 gather here, and then I'll have another gather once I turn the corner here. What I did for the back is I just went ahead and found a pretty firm piece of tag board. I know, it's beautiful, isn't it? But I used some spray adhesive and just basically glued it on. And then I'm going to put this on here like that. So I just have to line it up. I'm going to put a few staples in place, and then I'm going to do the upholstery nails all along the back. So here is the finished chair. I think it turned out really well. I spent about $50 on all the cushions and padding and the batting that goes over the cushions. I spent about $35 on the fabric because I bought it as a remnant, which I had to piece together, you saw earlier. So whether you want to do that or not, but upholstery fabric is very expensive, and I knew I'd have to spend a little bit of money on the padding. The upholstery tacks or nails were probably the easiest thing. They were 11 cents each, and I ended up going through about 200 of them because a lot of them bent as I was trying to hammer them in. So I spent a little over $100 on this piece, and I think it's going to look good in the room that I want it in, and it's going to be around for a long time. So I think it's well worth over $100. And if you find this video helpful and inspirational, please like and share, and I'll see you next time.